Perfect. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. We will be getting started in just a couple of short minutes, so hang tight. Perfect. I see a couple people joining in just now. We'll be getting started shortly. Thank you so much for attending today's session. Please hang tight and we'll be getting started in a couple minutes. Okay, we're just going to give it one more minute for just anybody that may be having any trouble dialing in, and we'll get started at 12:31. Okay, perfect. Let's kick it off. Thank you everyone again for joining us today. We're really excited to get started. We have really exciting session planned for you. We are featuring one wine and spirits retailer that was able to unleash their business potential using Oracle NetSuite's cloud-based business management solution. But before we get started, just wanted to cite a few housekeeping rules. In case you do lose any visual connectivity to the presentation, you are able to dial in via phone using the direct line listed in the green box on your screen and dialing in using the webinar ID. We will also be recording today's session and we'll be sending out a link to watch on demand. So stay tuned for that email in your inbox. And last but not least, we do have a large turnout for today. So all lines have been placed on mute. However, we still do want today's session to be as interactive as possible. So feel free to chat any of your questions or feedback comments in the chat box located on your bottom on your screen. And we'll definitely be able to address those at the end of our presentation. Perfect. And as many of you know, MyBar has been providing a series of webinars to help educate business leaders like yourselves on all things digital transformation. Our team here at MyBar has been serving the mid-market distribution space, concentrating specifically on the food and beverage industry for over the past 30 years. And during this time, we've been able to develop a diverse skill set, enabling us to provide all of the necessary technologies and services that businesses like yours need to thrive today. With our own team, in-house consultants, subject matter experts that can really help you get the most out of your implementation initiative. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our panelists for today, our Vice President, Jory Weissman, alongside Director of Technology at Crush Wine and Spirits, Will Hendrick, And I will pass it to our host for today, Jory, to take us away. Thank you, Jory.
Thank you so much, Maria, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Appreciate you being here. As Maria said, very excited about our presentation and happy to introduce you to Will Hendrick. He is the Director of Technology at Crush Wine and Spirits. Will, welcome.
Thank you. Very glad to be here today.
Excellent. Thanks for your time. And, Will, I think a good way to start is perhaps you can give the audience today a bit of a primer on Crush Wine, what you guys have been up to for the past bunch of years and what you guys do for a living.
Sure. Thank you. So Crush first opened its doors in the spring of 2005 with the goal of helping customers discover the wines they love. We serve everyone from top collectors to enthusiasts building their cellars to our neighbors on 57th Street in Manhattan. We're an omni-channel business selling through our email newsletter, through our 57th Street retail store, online on crushwineco.com, and through relationships our sales team have developed over the years.
Excellent. Appreciate that. And what we're going to do today is spend some time with Will talking about their digital transformation experience. I know a lot of people are considering a move to the cloud. Certainly, it's not something that's taken lightly. Changing business management solutions, or ERP systems as they're referred to today, is an involved process. It takes the entire organization desiring to move forward. So we'll look at what some of those drivers were. They come in multiple varieties, but we'll have a good conversation about that. We'll look at why Will and the team selected to work with NetSuite, and specifically also why they decided to work with MyBar as an implementation partner. And through the process, we'll talk with Will about some of the challenges and issues that they faced through this process. Some of them are expected, and of course, there's the unexpected bumps in the road that inevitably come up, and how we deal with them. And then we'll look at some of the key benefits that they were able to derive out of this transition. Again, I think those would fall into the category of both expected and unexpected. So it'll be interesting to hear about how Will has matured in terms of his use of the software. And then we will have an opportunity for a little Q&A with our panelists, just to get some of your questions, as Maria indicated, through that chat box available at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So again, thank you for being here. And as we think about Crush Wine's digital transformation drivers, I think they really come in three flavors as we've categorized them. One would be pertaining to the infrastructure and the server foundation that's in place to support their legacy systems. Next would be functionality, right? What about these new cloud solutions that are driving business productivity and enhancing functionality? And then last but not least is usability and the user expectations that have been born out of this digital transformation era, where everything is cloud-centric and everything is web-based, and everybody's expectations are certainly advancing, even your employees. So something to be considered. So Will and I spent some time together, obviously, in preparing for today. And I asked Will, hey, what were some of those key things, right? What were you thinking about? What really compelled the organization to move forward? And the number one thing he mentioned right out of the gate was that their legacy ERP system became unmanageable and perceived as a risk to the business. So really, I'd ask you, Will, how so? How was the legacy ERP a risk to the business, and why was it unmanageable?
Some of it was perhaps a little bit intangible in a degree. Just when you have problems and you raise support tickets, the response you get from the vendor of the software. Other things when you're trying to do something new, and the reaction you get, or when you see your ability limited to try new things. But it's no one big thing, but many little things.
Yeah, usually it's your cup has to be overflowing with rationale in order to make this happen. And sometimes it's death by 1,000 cuts, and you say, oh my gosh, I really got to do something here before the patient kind of bleeds out. When I think about risk and cybersecurity, comes to mind, certainly being able to manage and maintain and backing up the databases. And I guess that's something that's kind of really gone off your table, so to speak, in terms of making sure that the database is there and always available. So an area of responsibility that has certainly been relieved, I would imagine.
Absolutely. And even for, a small and thriving business to look at the types of work we need to do to maintain the software itself and the types of expertise we need, and should we be spending our time and effort on those?
Yeah, and I think some of the things, the feedback that you kind of alluded to that you were getting from the software vendor kind of led you to a perception of risk, suggesting, sometimes when you have technological obsolescence, you sometimes get some shrugged shoulders. I know that as we try to keep legacy systems moving forward, it could become more challenging and therein create some degree of risk. The next thing that you pointed out was pricing was increasing each year without feature development and support to match. I guess that kind of goes hand in glove to the first step. But I guess as the software got a little bit older, you were seeing increases and really no value. Is that the bottom line there?
That's it. And then when you start adding up the dollars and cents of it, you have the software and then how much you're spending on either spinning up a server to host it or spinning up some sort of infrastructure in AWS. And this was years ago at that point. But the amount of dollars and cents, you start to look at other solutions like NetSuite, and you can see where the pricing can be comparable to what you're doing when you have a full tally. Yeah,
well, that's interesting. You bring up a great point. I think the perception is that some people buy a server and they say, I'm going to make that investment, whether it's 8 or 10 or 15K, and they're going to put it into the corner and let it run. But the reality of it is it costs you a heck of a lot more, trying to keep that thing maintained. And in the era of cybersecurity, it's darn near impossible to, keep that level of security and surety without a significant expense. And very often when we talk to clients about what their existing condition is, and we tally up as it is the expenses, they're sometimes a little shocked to realize what they're spending, or in some cases shocked to hear what they should be spending on that they're not, and they're really rolling the dice around those particular costs. And I think that really leads into that point number 3, was setting up the infrastructure was challenging and expensive to maintain. But also, as you put in new servers, it led to glitchy software performance. So that ultimately, maybe you can expand on that a little bit, but I think the inference there is that you put in newer versions of operating systems, and perhaps your older version of software didn't work so well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you can run into stuff like that, and we understand how frustrating that could be. And then, and certainly when you did do the upgrades, obviously that presented certain challenges. A little bit of a different scenario today. We'll get into some of that, but suffice it to say, your upgrade process is a little bit smoother than it used to be.
It is today. The questions back then were, what won't work tomorrow after this goes through? Will the jobs finish properly? Will the support be available when we need them? When something goes wrong, as it would happen more often than not.
Yeah,
during those processes.
I get you there. And what I refer to as the mybar.net node, or a .net node, is the hidden cost of stagnation. And I think one of the things that people also don't look at is, what is the cost of falling behind what your competitors are doing? And very often people focus on the meat and potatoes, right? Want to get the straight through processing under control and get that functional. But there's a whole world out there of enhanced capability that people are taking advantage of. Some look at that strategically when they think about the software, and others not so much. But there is a cost to kind of standing firm in that you're not taking advantage of the wealth of software and investment that people like Oracle, NetSuite are putting into the products. So very much like when we add up the cost of the server platforms that they're investing in, when you start to think about things that they're not doing, whether it's CRM or expense management or budgeting and forecasting and planning, some of these higher level things, there is a genuine cost to not being able to take advantage of that. And And your competitors today are doing that. And if you're going to be a successful omni-channel retailer in the food and beverage space, you're going to need to take advantage of those things to make it fly. So once we move beyond infrastructure, we talked a lot about functional limitations. So you mentioned the word omni-channel. Why don't you share with us for a few minutes what the different methods, because I know you have a back office that's doing what we'll call informed commentary about the wines and spirits that you're selling and the collectors, but you also have the retail store, and you have some online presence. So share with us a little bit about the physical makeup of your footprint and distribution centers, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, the back office, the sales office is based in our 57th Street retail store. About 10 years ago, we expanded into a warehouse space as well in Long Island City. So we have clients with high touch customer service needs. Often they'll be purchasing wines, very specific wines, ahead of on a pre-arrival or futures basis, so that they can build and develop their collections with exactly what they're looking for, or what we have great deals on and great access to. Mm-hmm. So customers will place orders. We deal with some complexity, something called shipping seasons, we refer to them as, where you don't want to ship your wine in 90, 100 degree weather in the middle of summer, because that investment you're making is all of a sudden going to just spoil in shipment. So we have some complexities there that we need to manage, as well as the idea of the managing like the allocation control of pre-arrival orders.
Yeah, I jumped ahead on the sheet here just to bring up for the audience some of the key points of functional enhancements, but just wanted to head back into here and talk about the fact that so we've got the e-commerce channel, we've got the warehouse facility in Long Island City, we've got the back office customer service, and you've got a significant online presence. And I think one of the key drivers there was kind of expanding your online presence, which I know previously had been on an application that was taking orders. You had it in there, but you were looking for a better experience and wanted to expand that. Right? So
yeah, apologies for jumping ahead there. So with e-commerce, in our legacy ERP, I mean, we could feel the website slowing down when there were a few too many people logged into it, if that sort of makes sense. So initially in our transformation, we knew we had to get off the website that was running on that software. We moved to Magento 1 first, and that's where we saw limitations on what was possible with the integration. Right. We weren't able to move orders from Magento into that ERP. After time and expense, we ended up settling for something of a half integration, where we were able to publish product and inventory updates via a middle database we set up. But whenever a new web order came in, someone was keying it into the system to sync it up. And that's sort of a theme for knowing it was time to move on. Just further down the slide there, the popular accounting software, when your ERP was having trouble for dealing with the accounts payable and the bookkeeping function, and so the accounting person would use another standalone software and have to keep both systems in sync. It was just a struggle.
So those functional limitations were clearly inhibiting your growth. And then I know we talk about the concept of land and expand. We talked about e-commerce, and you started on Magento 1, and you had your really poor level of integration with your older ERP. But the desire was, because you had an investment there in Magento, a first pass was to integrate that, and got a higher level of integration with NetSuite. We work with certain partners to really make that happen. And that achieved an elimination of the redundancies, right? That you had a little bit more of a stable platform, but you didn't stop there. I know that you expanded your e-commerce and then transitioned over to, I think it's Shopify that you're using today. Is that where you moved to?
Yes, in May of 2020, we moved on to Shopify ahead of that Magento end of life, and that experience with NetSuite. Well, we'll get to that, but that was much wonderfully smooth.
Right. So as you know, as an omni-channel player, obviously recognizing that an investment needed to be made in the e-commerce appendage was going to be important, and reduction of supplemental offline applications such as a bookkeeping software or putting in line spreadsheets to compensate for core functional shortcomings. That is a common theme that I know you used as a driver, because the goal was to get everything that you could under one roof. NetSuite has the concept of this unified database that facilitates that. And you also then integrated POS, which I know that you had a POS system somewhat integrated into your older ERP platform that was functional, but subsequently the goal was to replace that and have a unified database there with the NetSuite solution, and you're using, I believe, TCS. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Cool.
And that, yeah, that they work really well. They give a nice interface that interacts directly with NetSuite software, as well as for us, it integrates some chip card readers. We can take Apple Pay, Google Pay, all the sort of latest things. And I think you'll be getting to a point where it's this ecosystem of vendors and solutions that work with NetSuite that just gives us options for whatever we need to do.
Which is great. I mean, and that's really behind it. And you as a system admin who's really, focused on, making sure that the plumbing's all working and that the software is doing what it needs to be doing. The last point is your ability to enhance the user experience. And I know that was fairly limited, as is often the case in the older ERP solutions, other than, maybe some external report writing or database querying. It really didn't give you much of an opportunity to change the user experience. What could you share with us about what you're doing today as it relates to that, and how you're able to satisfy some of those user requirements there?
It's easy. If someone needs to see a particular field in on a form in a particular place, or you need to make something simpler by removing fields, or if you need to draw up a saved search, that's the NetSuite terminology, to present specific pieces of information to a user. It's something you can do without just on your own as needs arise.
Which is great. And I know you didn't have that in that base NetSuite knowledge coming in. I think part of the role that we play is really one of empowerment and giving you the capability to do that. And part of what we had to learn in terms of our adoption curve as we moved from the legacy world to this is to really embrace those technologies and really help you achieve that. And there's a lot of good resources online for through NetSuite Direct. Our team also working side by side as you did through the implementation process. I'm sure got probably 70 or 80% of what you needed around being able to manipulate that. But NetSuite does permit you to enhance the user experience. And we'll talk about how that does not limit you in any way relative to upgrades. And you can talk about what your process has been like in terms of managing that. We touched on this screen a little bit in terms of functional enhancements, and you talked about the concept of pre-arrival allocations, and these are really specific things. And certainly today, when we talk about supply chain issues, which seems to be on everybody's mind, the concept of being able to manage our inventory, certainly for you when you're talking about experienced wine collectors, I'm sure they're a pretty particular group that wants to make sure that when they get their hands on the product when they're supposed to, and that your allocations are tidy. I think that you've been able to really leverage NetSuite in a much more positive way, but that wasn't always the case. I think you did a lot of that stuff offline before you embarked within NetSuite. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that transformation and how you used to handle that kind of management and what it looks like today.
Sure. So for inventory and so on and so forth, the first point here, or the second one?
Yeah, more the second one, I guess. I jumped in
More-
there. Fine. But really pick up where you'd like.
Yeah. The second piece is more about specific requirements. We're not in a significant part of our business, we're not following a very standard order to cash flow, where you're placing your order and you're getting your delivery the next day. There are some, for very good reasons, variations to how our customers interact with us and how we interact with them. And what I've found is the software handles them gracefully. So if a customer is placing an order for something that won't arrive for 3 or 4 weeks, we can take a customer deposit, it's called, against that, so we can collect the payment on the terms that we need to, and then track that inventory against the purchase order so we don't sell it to someone else, and we're only selling what's been purchased and paid for, and so on. And so it's not a completely straightforward process that we use, but the adaptability of the software has been just great.
That's awesome to hear. And then I know you used to do a lot of that stuff offline in terms of separate schedules on spreadsheets and trying to manage that stuff external to your older ERP, which has changed. And we'll go back to point number one. You talked about shipping and fulfillment management and the concept of the NetSuite fulfillment record, which is something that was new to you, that you basically had one document that you took an order and you shipped against it. But that level of granularity, that level of precision that NetSuite brings to the table in terms of fulfillment management, especially when we talk about inventory allocations, it's a little bit different, but I think it's been a benefit for you in certain ways. Is that right?
Yeah, a couple things here. From the old ERP to NetSuite, the concept of the fulfillment record was brand new to us. The same invoice, the order to invoice was an implicit indication that something had shipped. And now our warehouse and fulfillment team has a certain amount of control over packing orders and shipping that just wasn't available to us before. So I mentioned that there's a certain high touch customer service that we offer. Perhaps you want to place orders over a few weeks and then pick them up in the store. We can't be holding so many orders in our retail store, cluttering it up. So we're going to keep them in the warehouse. This introduces the challenge of transferring product between our warehouse and our retail multi-location. And previously, when it wasn't, when there wasn't a process outlined and documented in the software we were using, you fall back to a spreadsheet. So imagine you're a customer service or a sales rep, just taking an order, and you need to see if the product is in the place it needs to be. And if it isn't there, let's say you're on the phone, someone wants a case, it's over at the warehouse, it's not here in the retail store, you're going to a spreadsheet. You're copying and pasting the item code, the display name, you're putting the quantity in. Someone over at the warehouse looks at this list that just grows throughout the day, 50, 75, 100 lines, and starts copying and pasting it into a different spreadsheet, and so that they can ship it over to the other location. What our experience with MyBar and NetSuite was, the bones and the records were in place to create a custom scripting option that would automatically send the transfer order to the warehouse when necessary, eliminating this whole spreadsheet manual process. That's the point there.
No, that's great. And I think a lot of people do keep offline processes. And the goal here is to kind of re-engineer, and with the flexible tools that NetSuite brings to the table, leveraging, as you said, the bones, the spine is in place to support this omni-channel, multi-location, transferring, balancing inventory. It doesn't always come out of the box exactly as somebody wants. And then that's where we come in and a little ingenuity and help, curate a process that really works well. And I guess as good a time as any, we think about the fact that it does not preclude you from updating and upgrading the software, right? So while Will talked about the fact that he makes safe searches and does things on his own, and MyBar has done some scripting work and done some more advanced level services for him. None of that has really prevented him from taking advantage of the updates that NetSuite is going to publish 2 times a year. And we can talk a little bit, I guess now is as good a time as any, talk about what that process has been like for you, because I know that you help to manage that change a little bit. And when you get new releases, why don't you share with everybody how that process sort of works and what your role is and what your experience has been like there.
Sure, the upgrades have been fine. I don't want, well, in the old days they were scary before NetSuite. Now I follow just a checklist, a general checklist of things to do. We get access to a release preview in NetSuite that just comes with the package, where we can see our up-to-date business data from, snapshotted from a point in time. We can go in and test out adding customers, adding sales orders, billing sales orders, test out the fulfillments, the transfer scripting, just a list of standard procedures that we do, and ensure that the results we're getting are the same as we're expecting. I do also communicate with and reach out to our various third-party vendors ahead of an upgrade. More often than not, they'll say, nah, this upgrade doesn't affect us. Sometimes they'll say, we need to update our software, our suite bundle, please schedule some time. Sometimes they'll, once or twice we've had an issue where, something changed and they were working on a fix. Mm-hmm. Overall, it's just, it's communication, and then understanding that your data is all going to be there. It's going to be the same.
That's right.
Yeah, and the software itself will be, the changes are documented, test, make sure things are working great, but go into it eyes wide open.
I think you raised some really good points, and we're giving a fair and honest assessment of what it's like. I think you kind of manage the process. It goes really smoothly. I think you get the advantage, and then I think the release notes are really valuable. They actually broadcast them right there through the software itself, so what's coming. I think they're pretty good about that, and then you can share with your team and use those features that become available to you. And then before we close off this screen, I know one of the key things, and I think everybody thinks about this, is to have a centralized product information management database, right? You referred to it, almost as a PIM style system. And, one of the things that we did is we made sure that we set up within there, again, using some of the inherent flexibilities, the industry specific attributes. We talked about appellation and variety and vintage and region, those things that are important for your team to be able to group and stratify and coordinate your items. But really this now centralized database is being shared kind of everywhere, right? So it's being shared with your back office teams, it's being shared with your retail POS, being shared with your Omnichannel. And I know that wasn't always the case, but I think that's really made a big difference, at least through our conversation in terms of your team's ability to rely on a singular version of the truth. I know that was a big, important step for you. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add about that, but I think you're using it in a very robust way.
Yeah, we treat the NetSuite as the source of truth for the product information, and it allows us to export information to other systems in different ways. We can, excuse me. Sorry about that.
That's all right. We're all used to that in the Zoom era. It's not an issue. But you talk about, import and export of data manipulation, product information, and safe searching. I know you have an integration with the Delectable app, and maybe you can share with us some of what you're doing over there in terms of that.
Delectable, and also with our Shopify e-commerce and Google Ads, everything needs access to the same information, sometimes in slightly different ways. And through Safe Search, we can use some SQL formula transformations of the data. But the idea is we've structured we've structured all the attributes and properties to avoid duplicates, to avoid nuances that are incorrect, so that we can present a common face forward in all these different places. With Delectable, we're able to reach a different subset of customers. It was an easy setup in that I could give them the product information they needed through an automated CSV export with our Celigo app. They consume, it wasn't even CSV, it was a JSON export, and they consume what they need on a daily basis to update. It's almost like a product feed.
That's great.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the ideal way to do it. And I'm glad to hear that you're at some level in control over that process and not so dependent upon programmers, behind the curtain, so to speak, to help develop that. And you can do a lot of that stuff independently. And the Safe Search tool is one that we mentioned earlier is a very common tool to source and present data. And that could be integrated to the dashboards and BI, and could be used to support workflow and other capabilities there. So, pleased to hear that you're getting to do all of that. And it's really, I guess, data management around product information, but it's really around customers and other data sets that are of critical value to the business. So as we transition into NetSuite and looking at it, because really that is kind of the foundation that's made all of this possible for Will. I think the thing to think about is that NetSuite has been around and doing this a long time. They are the first cloud company and have really become the first name in cloud-based ERP or business management systems. We were just at the conference in Las Vegas last week and got to see all the new and exciting things. I could tell you the product interest is off the charts, and what they're doing in terms of reinvesting in the software and really adding value. I think Will made the comment earlier about not getting much value for the upgrade investment that they had to make. And I think when you see the rapidity of the change, you see what they're investing into the software and the capabilities, they'll continue to expand that. They're now at 26,000 customers worldwide, growing significantly each and every year. And they've become, at this point, a worldwide organization. They were originally spun out of Oracle and started like, a true Silicon Valley startup story above a liquor store in a strip mall. And they were, recently bought back by Oracle for billions of dollars. And you're seeing some of that investment dollars flow back into the organization. And know that it was born in the cloud, right? So it's scalable, it is secure, it is always available. I think, Will, we were talking offline, you didn't mention it today, but, obviously other than, some minor hiccups along the way, as advertised, you're getting the 99.9 whatever percent uptime. It's been, I believe, relatively smooth sailing for you relative to using them in their infrastructure. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. It works every, maybe every year or two, every so often something goes out for a couple of hours or half an hour. It happens with Shopify, it happens with NetSuite. It is well within that 99 point whatever uptime guarantee, and it's better than doing it yourself. But that's the thing.
This is for sure. And of course, the unified data model, unified object model, customization and integration, as is noted by this quote here by Gartner, the holy grail is being able to upgrade and update the system and really let your personalization survive. So one might ask, how does that really happen, right? What's behind that secret sauce? And what I did is it took this slide and you break it out a little bit, and you get to look at the fact that at the back end, right, built for the cloud, it is multi-tenant, which means everybody is on the same release. It has one standard unified data model. So if you're in CRM, you're in the integrated e-commerce, you're using any of the portals, any of the ERP, that is all built within the same unified database, and built on all the Oracle infrastructure. The Suite Cloud platform is really what allows these integrations to survive, and that allows your capability to point and click, customize the solution, as Will talked about, right? The user interface does allow an administrator to add fields, change the look and feel of forms. It has workflow tools that enable organizations to build their own workflow, whether that's credit checking workflow or approval process workflows. Integration APIs are all part of that stack, so that, again, he mentioned the term Soligo. We talk about the ecosystem of solutions that integrate with NetSuite. They're all plugging into this Suite Cloud platform. So as everything is migrated up, all your customizations are migrated up, there is no version lock associated because they're all building into that Suite Cloud platform. It consists of core ERP and financials. It does have a commerce solution. You heard that Will is using Shopify, was using Magento. These are all popular names. There are middleware applications that can connect everything in, or use the native NetSuite tools that are part of the suite. One World refers to your ability to run multiple entities and multiple subsidiaries. And then on top of that, they have additional industry-specific functionality. So Will is part of the wholesale and distribution. They even have a food and beverage bundle, whether you're doing local metro area distribution or you're doing national distribution, if you're doing co-packing and manufacturing, all around that food industry. And then they have an intelligence layer, which has all of the BI and analytics. One of the great things we saw released is that they're introducing and releasing in future, at a future point in time, the NetSuite data warehouse, which will allow you to do your own style ad hoc analytic development. So they have really a comprehensive set of tools. It's built on these layers that create the ability for you to personalize, whether it's through an industry specific bundle or through your own personalization or through integration, and then everything does migrate up along in the manner that Will was talking about. As we think about wholesale food and beverage, we often think about how do you adapt and integrate this into a business, and think about what are the core things you need to do. And we think about this as a stairway of implementation. So core financials, sales order management, purchasing, analytics, and dashboards, that's kind of a straight through process. Then by elevation, we mean let's incorporate other things. Maybe you're not using a WMS or barcode scanning solution. Maybe you use outsourced production, or you're doing your own production, and we want to put in work orders and manage that whole process. Start focusing on advanced analytics. Now that your core systems have been established and in place, the ability to analyze your data in more meaningful ways now becomes possible, and perhaps integrating things like workflow management and CRM as part of that elevation stage. And you can mix and match, right? Someone's coming in and they have a WMS and you need that day one, of course that gets handled. But we want to think about things as we expand and advance, and leveraging other tools that NetSuite brings to the table, right? They're going to bring advanced inventory replenishment, or using requisition and procurement solutions, demand and supply plan development, integrating customer and vendor portals, and more thoroughly developing a product information management system. And then, of course, accelerating into e-commerce and budgeting and other marketplace integration. What your stairway is will always be unique to you. So what we want to do is find out what's that minimum viable product, establish it, and then expand on that. And it's always best when you expand. And one little anecdote that Will and I were talking about offline was the fact that very often when you come into a new system implementation, you think that you need certain functionality. You think you need certain modifications. You think you need certain enhancements. But in the end, perhaps just really embracing and using the software as it was created can be helpful. And I think, Will, you shared with me a story about how we did some work early on, and perhaps it was rendered not necessary once the team learned how to use the core software. I think it was around inventory inquiries and things like that, if I'm not mistaken. Or
there was some discussions, and one scripting option that we went for, we were convinced we needed, and we knew the option in NetSuite how to access that information, but we wanted it all on the same page in a specific way, essentially mirroring the old software that we were used to, and we got it, and it's, I think, just we don't use it very much, and it's once you learn the software, there's a certain change management and fear within an organization, or maybe it's more of a not understanding how someone else approaches their position or their interaction with the software that can come out when you're looking to move to make such a drastic change as ERP implementation.
Yeah, I think, I think what people think are important day one are maybe not so important day 91 or year one, as you embrace and learn, the beauty of the software. I mean, it does take some time, and change management is important. And I know you've done a good job with that, and you want to minimize any of those costs of perhaps investing in something. And sometimes it's worthwhile just to do it to satisfy somebody who's, convinced that we need to do it the old way. So, you have that kind of legacy bias, as it's sometimes called, and look to avoid that. And we do that. We think about why my bar, and and hopefully you'll share with us and the audience about what kind of flipped the switch for you that we were the right partner to work with. And you sitting here today, some 3 or 4 years later, is evidence of that. But what we focus on in terms of what we call our pillars of success is making sure that we start everything and go throughout the solution with effective project management. And we want to make sure that all the resources are well coordinated, provide timely reporting, holding mutual accountability, right? It's key. There are things that you as an end user need to do in terms of data prep, in terms of reconciliation, in terms of harvesting that information, especially when you're coming from systems that are sometimes 2 or 3 different systems, which in and of itself can create not only a reconciliation headache for you in your life with your old ERP, but as you think about transitioning. So we know that effective project management helps to mitigate a lot of that throughout. And then we go through a phase of solution architecture and provide a comprehensive approach to planning the solution, which we did. We sat with Will, we sat with his team, we sat with the knowledge users, and understood how they interact with their current software. And I remember having those earliest meetings at your facility in Long Island City, and talking about the eccentricities of your business. And you're right, how to handle them elegantly. I'm glad to hear that we've been able to achieve that, because there are often a lot of non-standard processes in a business. Sometimes they should just be, pushed to the side for the greater good. Sometimes you have to find a solution. So going through some architectural process. And then we also look at the operational and analytic reporting requirements, right? What's the financial performance reporting requirements and operational reporting requirements, because that unlocks the key to a lot of things, right? That unlocks the key to processing, that unlocks the key to data set and data integration. So we focus a lot of that during our solution architecture phase. Will mention coordinating with the third parties. He's taken that mantle over when they do the upgrades, but initially making sure that when they were integrating Magento 1, that they didn't really have a knowledge of NetSuite. They leaned on MyBar to help them there, and same thing with the TCS POS solution, just to make sure that that handshake was good. Ultimately, I think you went over to Shopify, and dare I said, function mostly autonomously relative to your Shopify integration. And that's because, Will, kind of picked up the mantle from there and, learned how to do some of that stuff. And then, of course, MyBar handles all the data conversion work in the manner I talked about earlier. And then, most importantly, providing UAT, user acceptance testing processes to go through the sale to cash, procure to pay, the critical business processes. And there's a bit of a feedback loop that occurs between UAT and solution architecture, and even with data, so that as we go through this UAT process, we want to make sure that we've got everything really tightly aligned, so that when we ultimately train the staff, we have a good working process that's been thoroughly tested end to end. And then provide the dedicated go live support services. And I know, Will, you and the team relied on that heavily as we went live with this new system, and now all of a sudden orders start flowing in. Maybe you could share a little bit about your experience in working with us through that process, and how we help to mitigate some of that change.
Yeah. I part of that, and then also the why my bar. I recall just the conversations pre-sales, even where you were listening to what we need and offered insights on how to do things, one way or another, and uh, the support was great. At the time of go live, I remember very clearly as well. It's a scary time when you pull the plug on one and decide that the other way is the way to move forward. Looking back, I've seen the business grow, mature firsthand. I've been with Crush since 07, starting out in different customer service sales roles, growing into managerial positions before moving into the director of technology role. And it's clear to me that NetSuite was the right strategic choice.
Excellent. And I'm glad we're a part of that. And we talk about some of the, informed commentary. We like to do that and add value, right? Our mantra here is just to add value every step of the way where we can. And it starts from day one. We'll talk about that in a couple of moments. But as we think about some of the realized benefits, number one, you're getting upgrades 2 times a year. You talked about your change management process. That is a check, right? And we're able to leverage increased functionality, surety with the platform and everything that they literally, tens of millions of dollars that are being pumped back into that solution annually. It's been reliable and stable processing. Right? We've got enterprise level security as we talk about cyber threats, cyber issues, right? Knowing that you have redundancy, failover, the hosted model makes a whole lot of sense. The cost reduction in spinning up those servers, and had you been on an ERP solution over the past 4 or 5 years, I'm sure you would have spent a small fortune trying to secure your systems and database, especially as you moved into COVID era distributed workforce, which I know was like kind of really a non-issue for you, right? And I know a lot of people sitting here with legacy systems, they had to spin up terminal servers and they had, VPNs and all kinds of concerns relative to access. But I assume that was really a non-issue for you as you had to get to work.
Exactly. That was relatively easy. We still had some people on site during COVID, of course, because it's handling things, but the office and salespeople who could work remotely, it was just a matter of dialing in on the internet. Just have an internet connection and you can get to it as you need. We can manage the IP addresses, the access control, but
yeah, that's cool. And yeah, any device, really, anytime, anywhere, from at any moment, which is really cool. We talked about the easy to customize, no code, low code, right? You being able to really exercise a high level of control in your environment, taking advantage of pre-built industry bundles, capabilities and functionality, whether that's the Celigo e-commerce interface, whether that's TCS POS, or whether that's bundles that are embedded within the core wholesale and distribution, what they call the Suite Success bundle. You have partner channel support available through MyBar. That's really worked out well. As though we like to think we are the one and only, we know we are not, and that puts people in a very comforted position. And a wide variety of pre-built ISV solutions in the ecosystem, so that whether you have a Shopify integration today or EDI or any other type of solution that you need going forward is available, and NetSuite is continuing to evolve that. You've experienced a reduced total cost of ownership, certainly. Obviously, the spend on the front side is substantive as you implement the solution and bring on board a partner like us to work closely with you. But you certainly put the resources to bear on solving the issue, and you got the result, which is wonderful. And key thing is reduction of offline and manual processes, right? We've consolidated those systems where we have one accounting system, one version of inventory truth. We're distributing our data kind of as advertised. So I think it's kind of worked out well overall. And I guess you being here today is testament to that. So thank you.
Very happy to be here. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. And appreciative of everybody who is taking their time today to join us. And hopefully we can help you reach for the clouds in 2022. So if you can, take your phone, snap that QR code, or visit us at mybar.net, and we'll certainly be there at the ready to assist you in evaluating whether NetSuite is right for you, whether it's the right time for you. But if you do decide to subscribe in 2021 and implement in Q1 or Q2 of 2022, we're willing to make that a little bit easier and offset with some professional services and such. So we'd be really excited to talk with you. And you heard Will say that even on the front side of our initial presentations, there was some value exchange that was created. We're happy to do that, tell the story. We've been at this for a really long time, and would be enthused to be able to help you with your journey, just as we've helped Will and Crush Wine with theirs. So appreciate everybody being here. Thank you again. And Will, thank you so much. It was a great fun talking with you today.
Thank you. Pleasure's mine.
All right, cool. Be well, everybody. Thanks. Bye.